So the next buggy function that we're going to examine is find max even. Let's take a look at the code. Cool. So it looks like find max even takes in a list and then returns the biggest even value in that list. So given this list of only odd numbers, it outputs 0. Given this list of both even and odd numbers, it outputs the biggest even number, 8. Given this list of 10, 20, and 31, so both even and odd numbers, it outputs the biggest even number, 20. All right, that makes sense. Let's see if these doc tests actually pass. Ooh, so it looks like we're running into this error right here in the line 14 of our function. Type error, int object is not callable. All right, so let's first try to identify what the function calls are in this line of code. This is just a condition and using the modulo function, but it's not a function call. All right, here's the function call. So the error must be here. Max elem is an integer, but it is expected to be a function. All right, let's look at our code to try to figure out why that might be. So let's just examine all the places where max elem is assigned. So initially, max elem is assigned to what looks like the Python built-in max function, right? So Python's built-in max function can take in a list and then output the biggest element. It can also take in multiple numbers and output the biggest number. So for example, max can take in 1, 2, 3, and it'll always output whatever the biggest integer was passed into it. Max can also take into it a list of those elements. It'll return the biggest number in the list. So either of these work. All right, so we see that max elem is bound to the built-in max function. Fair enough. And then in the for loop, that built-in max function is called on to other elements. And we're not worried about those elements for now because they're not the problem. The problem is that the max elem itself is getting called and it points to an integer, not a function. So we don't need to worry about what's getting passed in because that's not what's causing the error. The error is caused by whatever this variable points to. Okay, so it gets called after being assigned to max. Makes sense to me. Where else is max elem reassigned? In here. In here it looks like max elem is bound to elem, which looks to be an integer. Okay, this makes sense. We are reassigning max elem to the element that's inside of this elem variable, which is going to be an integer, right? It's going to be one of the elements in our list. We shouldn't be doing that. What was intended instead? I'd like you to pause right here and figure out what should go in that blank instead. And I'll do the 5-second thing. Yeah, so after examining this code, it looks like what was intended to be there is max even, right? Because max even is a return value, and if an element is even, and it's bigger than the old max even value and whatever, and it's bigger than the old max even value because max called on the new elem and the old max even returns elem. Actually, this looks like a bug too. We actually want to know is whether elem is equal to the max of elem and max even, right? If elem mod 2 is equal to 0 and elem is equal to the max of both the element and whatever the old max is, we should reassign the max to be this new element. Cool. Let's see if our code works now. Awesome. So as you mentioned earlier, no news is good news, and this means that all of our doc tests are passing. If any of this is confusing in terms of our changes, I encourage you to look back at this code and try to walk through what's going on. I will say that this is a very convoluted way of writing this function. It might be easier to just get rid of this max call entirely and instead just say here, if lm is even and lm is greater than max even, this would work too. There's also various other ways you could try and simplify the code here. But for the purposes of debugging, if you want to fully understand what's going on here, I encourage you to just pause here and walk through the code on your own. But that's all for debugging.